Hello, Carl here, and welcome to this video on React's useReducer with TypeScript. And useReducer is excellent for managing complex state. So for example, where state is being changed from multiple different interactions within a component. So we're in Code Sandbox, we've got a counter component, and that renders two buttons, add and subtract. Now we've got some props coming in to increment and decrement the steps, and then we've got state for the current count. So we're going to need to update this count state from multiple places, so it's a decent candidate for useReducer. The first thing we're going to do is create some type for our actions, and actions are the things that are going to start the process of a state update. So we're going to use type aliases for these actions. Our first action is increment. That's going to have a type of increment, and then it's going to have an increment step property, which is going to be numeric. And this is what our add button is eventually going to fire. Then we're going to have a decrement action, similar deal, type property of decrement, and then a decrement numeric property as well. We want to make these types immutable, so we're going to use the read-only keyword before the properties. What we're going to do now is we're going to create another type that's the union of both of these types, because this is what we're going to pass into our reducer. So now it's time to implement the reducer. We're going to pass state and the action into it, and we can use the types that we've defined. The reducer needs to return state, so again we can use that state type that we've already defined. So the implementation of the reducer is going to be a switch statement where each branch handles a different type of action. You can see we're just returning state with the appropriate updated count. Now we can add a little trick here that's going to remind us when we add new action types. So let's first of all add a new action type that we aren't handling in the reducer, and then we'll see what this gives us. So we're going to have a new action type, double, that is simply going to double the count. So let's create that. We'll add it to our actions union type, and at the moment the reducer is not giving us any type errors. We're going to use the never type in our switch statement, but first let's create a function that takes in a parameter of type never. So if everything's good, this function should never be called. And we'll just put that never type in lowercase there. And so now we should be able to call that function from a default branch in our switch statement. And of course, if all our action types are handled, the default branch should never be reached. And we can see now that we're getting a type error warning us that we need to handle that double type. So if we handle the double type, we'll see that our type error goes away. That's our reducer complete. So let's go and use the useReducer hook in our counter component to use it. So the hook returns state and a dispatch function to update state. So we're going to destructure those. And then we call useReducer, passing in the reducer that we just implemented along with our default state, which is going to be a count of 0. And if we hover over our destructured state variable, we'll see it's of type state. And if we hover over the dispatch, we'll see it's of type dispatch of actions. So TypeScript has cleverly inferred the type of the state and the dispatch function. If we want to explicitly set the type of the state and the dispatch function, there's a generic parameter, and we can set that to React reducer, and that itself is generic, so we can pass in the type of the state and the type of our actions. And if we double check the type of our state, we'll see that it's still state, and if we hover over dispatch, we'll see that the type is still dispatch of actions. So that is useReducer done. Let's make use of this state and dispatch function now. So we'll start by showing the current count. Next we're going to wire up the add button, and we're going to use the dispatch function to invoke that increment action. And if we give that a try by clicking the add button, we can see the count incremented. We're going to do the same for the subtract button, so we're just going to copy that on-click handler and tweak it. And if we give it a try, we can see the count is subtracted. Let's add a double button now, and we'll wire that up to our double action. And if we try that button, we'll see that the count is doubled. Job done. So as a quick recap, we can strongly type our actions using type aliases We could have used interfaces. We use that read-only keyword to make them immutable. We can union all the actions together, and that can be the type of our action going into our reducer. And we can use that little never trick that's going to remind us when we have got new types of actions to handle them. And then when we're actually using the useReducer hook, generally it's going to infer the type correctly. But if it doesn't, we've got a generic type that we can pass in there. So that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed it.